Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a stack of source material and diving deep into a topic that has generated, well, huge amounts of conversation and frankly some genuine cultural shock. We are tackling something that has truly changed the visual landscape of pop culture, the celebrity face crisis.
It's a phenomenon that has become almost impossible to scroll past. We're witnessing this really rapid, profound shift in celebrity appearances that goes so far beyond, the usual filler or a routine cosmetic procedure.
It really does.
It's reached a point where online commentary is just dominated by that one unsettling phrase.
Yeah.
The uncanny valley jump scare.
That phrase hits exactly right, doesn't it?
It does.
Because it's not just about looking different, it's about looking recognizably human, yet fundamentally wrong. The sources we looked at are just full of examples. You see photos of major stars who, in the span of maybe 1 or 2 years, have transformed so completely that they appear, as one source put it, borderline extraterrestrial.
Or, and this is the other side of the coin, they look like these perfected static duplicates of themselves.
Like wax figures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're looking at pictures of stars who are still in their 30s, yet their faces look like these highly maintained waxwork versions of their previous iconic selves. So this isn't just, a handful of bad decisions. It's the widespread adoption of a terrifyingly rigid new beauty template.
And what's so unsettling, as you pointed out in the analysis, is that the public response is just overwhelmingly negative, yet the trend keeps accelerating.
It does.
It's like Hollywood collectively decided to chase a look that nobody actually liked.
That is the core mystery we need to solve. And to do that, we've broken down what we're seeing into 3 pretty distinct categories. These categories don't just describe the visual result. They reflect 3 different approaches celebrities are taking to achieve this new, unrecognizable template.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's unpack that framework. What are the 3 paths that really define the celebrity face crisis?
So, the first path, and this is the one that often generates the most immediate shock, is the superinflated.
Okay.
These are the faces that show evidence of excessive repeated filler and Botox, resulting in a look that is just swollen, puffy, and seems to be constantly stretching the skin outward.
The look where the natural bone structure has basically been erased by all that volume?
Completely erased.
That makes perfect sense. And if that's the result of adding too much, I'm guessing the second category is the complete opposite.
Precisely. The second path is the vacuum sealed. This is a trend defined by the aggressive removal of facial volume, particularly fat.
Right.
And it leads to an extremely sharp, hollow-cheeked appearance. The face looks taut, angular, and almost, laminated onto a skull, as we said. It's just stripped of all the natural softness that really defines youth.
And finally, that third category, the one the sources were calling the nuclear op.
That would be the who are you, or full reconstruction. These are the really high-end surgical transformations, the modern, sophisticated facelifts and resets that result in a person who looks objectively younger and tighter, but is often utterly unrecognizable from who they were before.
They look like they've gone through a complete aesthetic upgrade and come out with that distinct Instagram model look.
Exactly.
So our mission today is not to moralize or to shame the individuals caught in this cycle. I mean, the pressure they face is unimaginable.
Right.
Our goal is to use this source material to uncover why the shift is happening now, why it keeps escalating despite this public horror, and what the ultimate deeply dangerous message is that this sends to you, the listener. Because when we reach a point where a celebrity in their mid-20s getting a facelift is considered normal or even aspirational, we have to ask what exactly broke in our definition.
And as we move through these categories, we're going to find that these 3 very distinct visual problems, inflation, sealing, and reconstruction, are surprisingly all symptoms of the very same core issue, a collective panic in Hollywood over the visible effects of rapid weight loss and age.
So let's begin with the starting block, the undeniable, relentless influence of celebrity. We all know that stars set trends, but social media seems to have accelerated this from, a gentle influence into a genuine herd mentality.
That herd mentality is absolutely critical to understanding the current crisis.
Wow.
Celebrity influence today is no longer just confined to red carpet looks or specific brand endorsements.
Right.
It dictates micro behaviors, consumer habits, and these aspirational aesthetics at a speed we just never seen before. And the perfect case study for this is the phenomenon around Hailey Bieber.
She is cited over and over again as one of the most powerful arbiters of culture for this generation. It's not just that she sells clothes, she sells an entire impossibly casual lifestyle.
And the absurdity of the consumer response really highlights this. I mean, take the example of the disposable toothbrush.
Oh, I remember this. It was everywhere.
It was. She posted a casual, random video, not even an ad, just lip syncing, where she happened to be chewing on what turned out to be this small, disposable Colgate toothbrush.
A completely mundane object, but the result was anything but.
Exactly. The internet, especially TikTok, went into a complete frenzy. You had users posting videos saying things like, if Hailey Bieber is chewing this, I need to know what it is. And when the product was identified, those little toothbrushes sold out. Globally, brands were scrambling to duplicate the item to meet this totally inexplicable demand.
And the follow-up example is even more bizarre. Her just casual video of eating sushi while she was wearing a specific style of face mask.
Oh, yeah.
And that led to this deluge of users trying to perfectly recreate the exact angle, the lighting, the food, and of course the mask.
It just proves that the audience, and particularly the younger demographic, is intensely focused on mimicking every single detail of the celebrity aesthetic. Social media has created this collective brain where aspirational living is defined not by, unique achievement, but by the precise replication of celebrity routine.
And yet the irony is that this modern compulsion to replicate is moving so far away from the definition of beauty we had just a couple of decades ago. If you look back at the 90s and the early 2000s, what was the defining trait of a beautiful celebrity face?
Individuality. That's the critical contrast. If you lined up the biggest female stars of that era, think Cameron Diaz, Julia Roberts, Kate Winslet, or Beyonce, they all looked distinctly uniquely themselves.
Right.
Their faces had specific quirks, prominent features, unique bone structures, and most importantly, they had complete natural expression.
So how did we get from celebrating these unique, expressive faces to chasing the current homogenized, carbon copy Instagram face of 2025?
Well, we have to trace the pendulum swing back to the historical context, specifically the toxicity of the 90s and early 2000s, which, while it celebrated unique faces, it created an absolutely brutal standard for the body.
That was the infamous era of extreme thinness, where the mantra was, nothing tastes as good as skinny.
The focus was exclusively on body size. The sources recall how ruthless the media was, using paparazzi photos to zoom in on any perceived flaw. Magazines would literally circle a patch of cellulite on a celebrity's thigh and treat it like it was a headline-worthy disaster.
It would run these front-page splashes asking, is she pregnant or just fat?
It was awful. The psychological damage that caused was just immense, pushing women to dangerous extremes to maintain an unnatural size zero standard.
The cultural response to this toxicity was eventually positive, though. We started seeing a shift. Conversations about mental health, body positivity, diversity, they began to filter into advertising. It felt like we were evolving toward a healthier acceptance of different shapes and faces.
We were, but then came what one source called the sinister turn. Right when society was sort of recovering from the damage of the skinny era, the Kardashians mainstreamed a completely different type of unattainable standard, centered on the BBL, the Brazilian butt lift aesthetic.
We need to be clear about what that look actually entailed.
It was a very specific physical blueprint, dramatically huge hip, a perfectly rounded, hyper-protruding butt, combined with a completely flat stomach, slim arms, and of course a sharply contoured face. It created a silhouette that just defied natural human proportion.
And the most destructive part of this transition wasn't even the look itself, but the associated denial. They mainstreamed this radically altered body shape while perpetually claiming it was all natural.
Absolutely. They implied that they achieved this completely different skeletal structure and volume just through exercise, like Pilates or squats.
Right.
This narrative of innate natural perfection was devastating because it implied that if you weren't achieving this supernatural figure, it wasn't because it was surgically enhanced, it was because you just weren't trying hard enough.
So this put immense pressure on ordinary women to achieve the unachievable, leading many to seek out dangerous permanent surgical alteration, all under the false belief that the standard bearers of the trend were natural.
It set an utterly unattainable aesthetic standard based on a foundation of systemic denial. But as we transition into the next phase of this crisis, we see that the BBL aesthetic, like all extreme, had a shelf life.
And here we find ourselves at the central catalyst of the current facial crisis, because the BBL era, which defined beauty for the 2010s, quickly and rather suddenly died.
It really was a silent, swift reversal. The sources talk about the bizarre spectacle of watching the curve that essentially built an entire media empire being quietly. Pendulum just violently swung back toward romanticizing extreme thin. The skinny 90s model look was back.
And this rapid shift back to the aesthetic of thinness was immediately supercharged by the Ozempic factor.
Yes. The introduction and mass adoption of GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic just fundamentally altered the game. It provided a pharmacological shortcut, effortless thinness, that offered the rapid, drastic weight loss that the Hollywood machine had secretly chased for decades. It solved the dieting problem immediately.
But the truly unsettling detail here, which the sources really highlight, is the demographic using it. This is not predominantly people with a medical need for weight loss.
No, not at all.
It's being used by already small, already healthy celebrity, people who have personal trainers, private chefs, nutritionists on staff, and yet they are shrinking at record.
The visible supernatural loss of weight, often 30 or 40 pounds of total body mass happening in months, is just undeniable. Yet the accompanying denial is still rampant, feeding into that illusion of effort.
The classic claims, I just switched from dairy to almond milk, or it's Pilates and drinking more water. It's a total breakdown of credibility, but the PR necessity of maintaining that will.
And that denial, combined with the rapid physical change, leads us directly to the facial crisis. Because when you lose weight that fast, especially when you have very little to lose to begin with, your face reacts violently. It ages instantaneously.
It doesn't just get thinner, it collapses. Can you detail for the listener exactly what happens to the facial structure during that kind of rapid weight loss?
Well, when weight loss is slow and steady, the face adjusts naturally. But rapid systemic weight loss means losing crucial facial fat pad, the deep supportive fat that sits under the eyes, in the cheeks, and around the jawline. This rapid deflation causes the overlying skin to immediately appear loose and wrinkled.
So the skin loses its scaffolding.
Precise. The face loses volume, the cheeks sink in, and you get hollowing in the temples and under the eyes, which results in that severe, unsettling, gaunt look. One commentator described it visually as the Day of the Dead type of look. The face appears older, tired, and disproportionate to the now ultra-thin body.
And this is the moment of panic celebrity. Because in Hollywood, looking old is considered a career-ending crime.
The mirror shows them a face that looks instantly aged by their own extreme thinness. So instead of taking a step back, maybe slowing down the weight loss or seeking the kind of psychological support needed to deal with the pressure, they bypass all that and run straight to the surgery table.
They're reacting to an artificial problem, the quick aging caused by pharmaceutically accelerated weight loss, with an immediate artificial fix.
Yes, they enter the era of full facial reconstruction as a defensive measure. They are desperately trying to reinflate the sunken areas, lift the sagging skin, and recapture the volume they aggressively stripped away. It's a devastating cycle of self-modification driven by pharmaceutical advancements and Hollywood's perpetual insistence on youth.
So the BBL era drove them to permanently change their body. The subsequent Ozempic-fueled era drove them to permanently change their faces in panicked response.
Exactly.
That panic reaction manifests most clearly in our first category. Inflated to oblivion. This is the look that has become the signature uncanny valley jump scare.
It is the easiest to spot, and I think often the most shocking. This is characterized by cheeks, lips, and sometimes even foreheads that are so pumped full of product, primarily filler and Botox, that they lose all natural contour, becoming puffy, rounded, and smooth to an unnerving degree.
The case study that really dominated the media conversation and delivered that shock factor was Selena Gomez. The change was so dramatic and so rapid that when new photos first appeared, many people genuinely wondered if they were looking at AI generators.
It was a visible, dramatic alteration that seemed to erase her defining feature. And if you look at her progression, particularly across seasons of her show, Only Murders in the Building, you can actually track the gradual, almost relentless buildup of product.
And the end result of that buildup is a face with no movement.
Exactly. For an actor, this is professionally catastrophic. When the face is filled and frozen, it becomes incredibly difficult, if not physically impossible, to convey subtle human emotion. And the visual distance between her natural appearance and the inflated result led to some truly, bizarre comparisons.
I have to bring up the highly specific cultural reference, the source, comparing her look to the cartoon face on a bag of Space Raiders.
Right.
Now, for our global listener, Space Raiders is a very specific UK chip brand known for its exaggerated, puffy alien mascot. The comparison sounds absurd, but it drives home the visual point. The face loses its depth and begins to resemble a smooth, caricature-like object.
That analogy sticks because it captures the non-human quality. And to understand why this happens, we have to look closely at the mechanism of overfilling. The critical technical detail is that filler, especially the older hyaluronic acid types, does not simply vanish completely over time as promised.
Lingers.
It stacks up. When filler is repeatedly injected, particularly without being fully dissolved between sessions, it starts to migrate and build upon itself. This accumulated product pushes the skin outwards, rounding the face, eradicating the natural definition of the cheekbones, and smoothing out lines that are essential for expression. That's why the cheeks appear so unnaturally full, almost as one person said, about to burst off the face.
It's the visual evidence of years of product layering, all contributing to a look that is perpetually swollen. And Selena Gomez is far from the only example of a high-profile figure caught in this cycle.
Oh no. We see this pattern across various figures, including Taylor Swift, who in recent years has appeared noticeably rounder and a lot more swollen in her facial features, particularly around her jawline and midface, compared to her historically much sharper look.
And what's driving this relentless quest for volume, even in people who are so young? It seems rooted in social media anxiety.
That's the deeper layer. TikTok culture has mainstreamed an anxiety that treats aging as a disease. We see this constant discussion among people in their late teens and early 20s about preventative Botox.
Right.
They are convinced that they need to start paralyzing facial muscles before they even form a line, treating wrinkles like some kind of contagious disease that needs a preemptive vaccination.
It's the commercialization of fear. We have collectively decided that the worst thing a human can do is look like they have lived a life.
And here is the brutal irony that the sources underline. Getting these procedures done prematurely often makes young people look substantially older than they actually are.
That's so counterintuitive. Why would looking smooth make you look older?
Because unnatural smoothness and a lack of expression are hallmarks of an artificial, overprocessed look. The sources note that girls getting Botox and heavy filler at 20 often end up looking visually aged more like 40 because their face lacks the dynamism and youthful softness you'd expect at that age. They are sacrificing natural youth for engineered perfection, and the result is just disconcerting.
It looks like they're trying too hard to achieve a look that their bodies aren't ready for.
Exactly. And even when older celebrities go too far into the inflated category, the results are often cited as genuinely terrifying. The Simon Cowell anecdote is perfect for this.
Yeah.
He admitted publicly that his excessive use of filler and Botox got so extreme that he looked like something out of a horror film, and that his own son was actually scared of his face.
That's the ultimate threshold. When the people who share your DNA no longer recognize or feel comfortable looking at you, the aesthetic boundary has been decisive.
Absolutely.
But while the inflated look is driven by adding volume, the celebrity response to the Ozempic-era panic also drove a trend in the exact opposite direction.
This brings us to category 2, the vacuum seal. This look is defined by aggressive removal rather than addition of volume, driven by the desire for an ultra-sculpted, high-fashion aesthetic.
It's the laminated face sharp, hollow, and stretched flat against the underlying bone structure. If the first category was the balloon, this is the aggressively deflated, tightly drawn.
And the key visual example of this aggressive aesthetic shift is the transformation of Miley Cyrus. I mean, looking at her now in her early 30s, she has this incredibly defined, high-contrast look that makes it almost impossible to reconcile with the softer, rounder face she had even 5 years ago.
And the primary procedure driving this incredibly angular, hollow look is widely understood to be buccal fat.
Exactly. This is the latest cosmetic obsession. Buccal fat is the naturally occurring fat pad located deep within the lower cheek, which gives the face that soft, youthful fullness, the baby face. The procedure involves surgically removing these fat pads completely to achieve a highly defined, hollowed-out profile.
It's remarkable how quickly the standard changed. The baby face was the ideal 20 years ago, the epitome of youth and attract. Now it's treated like an undesirable feature that needs to be surgically eliminated.
It speaks to the hyper-specific, fleeting nature of beauty trends today. The market currently idolizes the sharp, almost skeletal glamour associated with this sickly, skinny model type that has returned alongside the Ozempic wave.
And that natural baby face is just incompatible with this new angular standard.
Totally incompatible. And one of the most publicly discussed examples of this shift, which many sources cited as particularly jarring, is actress Erin Moriarty from The Boys.
That transformation was just devastating to observe.
It really was. She was initially noted for her incredibly youthful, angelic look, that natural baby face that made her so unique and appealing. But subsequent seasons showed a really noticeable change. Her face had been dramatically sculpted, losing that natural fullness for the aggressive, hollowed-out look that defines this category.
Despite her public claims of only having minor fill, the visual evidence is so... It was described in one piece of commentary as witnessing an angel wing, the loss of that youthful, unique favor of the trend aesthetic.
And this choice to aggressively carve volume out of the face is, once again, a desperate attempt to stay relevant. It's the inevitable pendulum logic. People grow tired of the BBL, inflated volume look, so they violently swing to the extreme opposite, the sharp, high-fashion angularity.
But unlike the inflated look, the vacuum-sealed face often requires a specific surgical procedure, the buccal fat. That means this standard is inherently more unattainable for the average person relying on just diet or makeup.
Precisely. It sets a standard that is surgically engineered to achieve an unnatural degree of sharpness. And this specific trend is proving to be incredibly damaging because removing buccal fat is largely permanent. Our sources note that as a person naturally ages, the face loses fat anyway, so those who remove their buccal fat in their 20s or 30s may find themselves looking prematurely skeletal and gaunt in their 40s and 50s.
So they are making a permanent aging alteration now in the name of chasing a temporary, hyper-specific aesthetic trend.
They're trading future volume for current angularity, and the risk is substantial.
Now we come to the most extreme end of the spectrum, Category 3, full facial reconstruction, where we are looking at total, high-end surgical resets.
Yeah. In the past, when we talked about extreme plastic surgery, we pictured that botched look, the stretched, melted appearance associated with figures like Mickey Rourke or Donatella Versace. But surgery itself has had a massive technological glow-up.
It really has.
Modern surgical techniques are incredibly advanced. They are capable of achieving far more subtle yet profoundly comprehensive transformation. The goal is no longer just stretching the skin, but truly resetting the underlying facial architecture.
We see this in figures like Christina Aguilera. She looks objectively younger, often appearing like she stepped out of 2006, but she now possesses that distinct, smooth, uniform Instagram model appearance, making her look like, as one commentator Riley observed, the newest member of Selling Sunset.
And then you have Kris Jenner. She is open about her multiple facelifts, and the result is a 70-year-old face with skin that is super unsettlingly tight. While you have to acknowledge the skill involved, the result is technically amazing for her age. The profound lack of natural movement is terrifying. The face is static.
The psychological discomfort comes from that disparity. A face that should show 70 years of life is moving less than that of a teenager. What procedure is driving this extreme, unsettling tight?
The sources point to the modern evolution of the facelift, often dubbed the dermiplane face. Yeah. You could think of this as a traditional SMAS, but on steroids.
Can you explain the difference?
A traditional facelift often just lifts the skin and maybe some superficial muscle. The dermiplane technique goes much deeper. It goes under the skin, dissecting and pulling up the deep layers of muscle and fat together in one unified sheet. The surgeon effectively lifts and repositions the entire structure of the face, not just the surface.
So it creates that super tight look because the entire facial mass is pulled back, not just the top layer.
It creates the appearance of literally surgically putting on a mask of your own face. The skin is perfectly smooth, but the underlying muscles are frozen in a new, taut position.
And the sheer volume of leading women in Hollywood who have opted for these extensive procedures is staggering. We're talking about people like Nicole Kidman, Gwyneth Paltrow, Lindsay Lohan, Renee Zellweger.
This is where the crisis moves beyond individual vanity and becomes a profound problem for the art form of cinema itself. When these surgically altered faces appear on screen, we, the audience, are meant to emotionally connect.
But connection relies on reading microexpression, on understanding the subtle movement that conveys internal.
And the face simply stops behaving like a normal human face. The tightness and paralysis make it, as our analysis noted, physically impossible to tell what emotion she's trying to portray. The face can no longer reflect the complex internal life of the character.
The source material is full of specific, heartbreaking exam problem manifesting.
Oh yeah. Take Renee Zellweger in her latest roles, including Only Murders in the Building. Her mouth often stays in the same tight, pulled position every time she speaks. There are no signs of life whatsoever in the lower third of her face. The performance becomes a recitation rather than an emotional portrayal.
Or Nicole Kidman, who was cited as being genuinely distracting. You can see her trying to act. Her eyes are conveying the emotion, but in the close-up, her face just isn't cooperating.
Right.
The audience spends less time immersed in the scene and more time just analyzing the physical limitation of the performer.
And the most painful example, which really underscores the failure of this technology in the context of drama, was Lindsay Lohan attempting a crying scene. The tightness caused the expression to look so strained, it was described in the sources as looking severely constipated, rather than genuinely distraught.
That is the consequence of trading expression for perfection. And this isn't a new complaint, is it? You have directors who rely on nonverbal cues sounding the alarm.
Not at all. We found a reference to Martin Scorsese complaining about this issue all the way back in 2003, specifically about the rise of Botox. He noted that it was becoming difficult to cast actresses who could genuinely express nonverbal emotions like anger or fear because their faces were becoming too smooth and unresponsive.
So the current crisis is just the 20-year evolution of that original problem, now made catastrophic by modern.
Exactly.
We've established the historical arc, the specific procedures, and the impact on the acting profession. Now, let's dig into the driving. The extreme societal pressure and the generational mess.
The central driver for women in Hollywood is the visceral, existential fear of irrelevance. The industry is fundamentally aged. An actress hits 40 and suddenly she's pigeonholed into mom roles or marginalized parts, while her male co-stars of the exact same age are hitting their career peak and starring opposite younger women.
So for many, these comprehensive, irreversible procedures are done not out of sheer vanity, but out of a deep-seated professional terror. The the fear of becoming entirely unemployable if they allow themselves to look their true age.
And that intense pressure forces the lowering of the age threshold. If 45 used to be the time for a first minor lift, Hollywood has now pushed 35 into being the new time to book your first facelift. The standard is just accelerating.
The case of Emma Stone is particularly heartbreaking, as she is only in her 30s.
Emma Stone used to be one of the most animated, expressive actresses working. Her whole appeal was rooted in her genuine, open, and sometimes goofy expression, those big, beautiful, expressive eyes. But she recently debuted a look where her features were visibly pulled back, higher eyebrow, a sharper jawline.
And the result, while still conventionally beautiful, is that she looks like everyone. That unique, animated quality that made her an acting powerhouse is now muted in favor of the uniform, standardized aesthetic.
When one of the industry's most successful and expressive stars succumbs to the pressure at 35, the message to everyone else is clear. If Emma Stone needs a surgical reset to maintain relevance, what chance?
And the crisis is finally extending beyond. The sources note that male actors are starting to feel the pressure for perfect. Brad Pitt, Ryan Gosling, and even Jim Carrey, who is notoriously anti-Hollywood and has always prided himself on his expressive, natural face, have all seemingly undergone some degree of cosmetic enhancement to maintain a hyper-youthful appearance.
The generational message this sends is perhaps the most dangerous element. When 20 and 30-year-old celebrities are aggressively changing their faces, the implication filters down immediately. If they need it, maybe I need it too.
We have a statistic from our research that perfectly illustrates the cultural conscious panic. We saw a shocking 45% increase in cosmetic forehead lifts among people under 30 in just 1 year.
I still struggle to process that number. Why on earth are healthy people under 30 needing invasive surgery to lift their forehead? It just shows how fundamentally the anxiety about aging has shifted. We've gone from accepting a few fine lines to viewing every natural crease as a severe medical imperfection requiring immediate correction.
And this anxiety is being commercially weaponized. We are talking about the commercialization of anxiety.
Absolutely. The consumer industry is capitalizing on this fear at increasingly younger ages. We see the phenomenon of Sephora kids, literal preteens and young adolescents in stores, spending their pocket money not on sweet, but on high-end anti-aging skincare, packed with active ingredients like retinoids and peptides.
When I was 12, my biggest concern was which flavor of lip gloss to buy. Now, literal children are being targeted with and are internalizing the necessity of professional anti-aging.
New skincare brands are launching specifically targeted toward literal children, convincing them that their natural skin is already failing and needs preventative intervention. This normalizes the idea that faces are supposed to look smooth, sculpted, lifted, and edited, even before puberty.
Ultimately, these procedures are performing the same kind of damage that was inflicted by heavy-shopped body thousands, but now it's happening in real life.
These escalating standards are literally rewriting what beauty should look like, defining it as something synthetic, expressionless, and unachievable for the vast majority of people who are just living their normal, expressive lives. The result is a society where normalcy is viewed as a failure state.
Now, we should acknowledge the counter-narrative. There is regret. Courtney Cox, for example, famously spoke about dissolving her fillers, saying she reached a point where she didn't recognize her own face anymore and had to consciously reverse the changes.
That recognition that the erasure was an enhancement is powerful, but those messages of regret rarely dominate the algorithm. What gets relentlessly pushed on your timeline is the positive feedback. Wow, Anne Hathaway looks fantastic with her new vacuum-sealed face, or look how much younger this star looks after her total reset.
That praise is what reinforces the trend. It convinces the next generation of actresses and the audience at large that erasure is not only normal, but highly desirable. It perpetuates a standard that mandates the replacement of unique, expressive features with a uniform, expressionless surgical template. This has been an extensive look into a subject that reveals so much about the intersection of technology, anxiety, and cultural pressure. Let's quickly synthesize the core takeaways, deep dive into the celebrity.
We identified the primary catalyst, the cultural pivot toward extreme thinness, accelerated by pharmaceutical advance, which caused rapid facial volume loss and drove a collective panic. That panic manifested in three distinct yet equally extreme paths: the superinflated, based on excessive filler stacking, the vacuum sealed, based on surgical fat removal, and the full reconstruction, based on deep modern facelifts.
And the critical damage beyond the individual celebrity's self-perception. It's damaging to the future of cinematic art because it removes the actor's ability to emote subtly and crucially, it is damaging to future generations because it promotes an expressionless, unattainable standard of that suggests that natural aging and natures are.
The collective societal embrace of this hyper-engineered, unnatural look is a profoundly sad commentary on our current value. We are watching incredibly talented people voluntarily eliminate the unique features and expressions that made them compelling in the first place.
So here is the final provocative thought for you to carry forward the next time you escalating trend on your screen or on your social. We have fundamentally forgotten which is that aging is a privilege.
Every line, every crease, every sign of wear and tear on your face, they are not defects that require aggressive erasure. They are proof that you have lived. You have experienced joy, survived stress, laughed uncontrollably, healed from wounds, and you are still. Not everyone is lucky enough to get that proof.
Looking older, showing the signs of time, is not a failure of mate. It is literal evidence that you are alive and that you have navigated this challenging world. It is a privilege. Hold on to that perspective the next time you feel the pressure to conform to a standard that prioritizes still.
That is the most important lesson we can take from this crisis.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.